My sister laughed when I sat with the guests. It wasn't a loud laugh. Not the kind that makes a scene. It was quiet, almost elegant, just loud enough to be noticed by those closest to her, and sharp enough to slice through my chest. She covered her mouth with her manicured hand, turned to her husband, and whispered something that made him smile without looking in my direction. That was how it always went. Subtle, polished cruelty. The banquet hall was dressed in ivory and gold, with chandeliers dripping crystal and wine glasses that caught the light like diamonds. This was her evening, Elisa's architectural award ceremony held at the State Heritage Building. Rows of tables lined the vast room, each place setting pristine, menus printed in gold leaf, names carefully calligraphed. Except mine. My card just read guest, misspelled in cursive. I found my place beside Uncle Horace and two distant cousins I hadn't seen in years. They nodded politely, then turned their attention back to their phones. No one acknowledged me when I walked in. Not my mother, not my father, not even my youngest brother, who used to beg me for bedtime stories when he was little. I stood there for several long seconds, letting the shame flush through my cheeks before quietly finding my seat. Elisa had her own table, of course, right near the stage, with a custom banner behind her, designing the future, Elisa Moretti, visionary of stone and steel. She wore a navy gown that sparkled under the light and a smile that never reached her eyes. The mayor was seated beside her. Even the regional press had shown up. Cameras flashed as she leaned in to speak to the state governor's wife. And me. I was in the third row, near the air vent that made the tablecloth shiver. No one offered me a glass of champagne. When I reached for one myself, a waiter gently redirected the tray, as if I didn't belong. My mother passed by our table once, on her way to the powder room. She didn't break stride, just said, "Sit straight, Clara," without looking at me. That was all. That was everything. I could hear my sister's voice rise occasionally above the elegant murmur, her laughter as she shared stories of her projects in 4 countries. People nodded, impressed. Proud parents beamed. And I sat in my simple navy dress, the only one I owned that still fit after years of field work, clutching the edge of my seat like it was the only thing tethering me to the ground. They all still thought of me as the one who dropped out, who left after the argument, who went God knows where, and sent no postcards. To them, I was the stubborn one, the disappointment, the black sheep who had dared to say no. No one at the table asked me what I did now. No one wondered where I'd been for the past 10 years. As far as they were concerned, I hadn't been anywhere. That night, the room smelled like perfume, wine, and expensive polish. The kind of scent that makes you feel poorer just by breathing it in. I picked at the appetizer, stared at the gilded stage, and wondered, not for the first time, why I'd even come. Maybe I wanted to see them again. Maybe I thought it would be different. That Elisa would smile like she used to. That someone would say, "It's good to see you, Clara." That they would ask me something, anything. But my sister laughed when I sat with the guests, and the whole room turned slightly colder. I wasn't always invisible. There was a time when Elisa and I shared a bedroom painted in pale yellow, with twin beds and a line of stuffed animals dividing our invisible boundary. Back then, she used to sneak chocolates into my pillowcase, braid my hair before school, and defend me when I came home with bruises from kids who didn't like the way I stuttered when I read aloud. But everything changed after high school. She got accepted into the National School of Design. I didn't even apply. My path had already begun to diverge long before the forms were due. I remember the fight clearly, every word of it. My father shouting across the dinner table, "You're throwing your life away!" And my mother looking at me like I had announced a terminal illness. Elisa didn't say much that night. She just stared at her plate, silent, like my decision was too stupid to deserve comment. I had chosen a government construction training program. It was hard labor, mostly foundation digging, inspection work, emergency site clearance. I wanted something real, something that built from the ground up. They never came to my certification ceremony. Not one of them. My mother said she had a charity lunch, my father had board meetings, and Elisa sent a short message that read, "Hope it went well. Be safe." They thought I'd come crawling back after 6 months. That I'd fail, give up, realize how unsuitable I was for a life outside the family's path of education, prestige, and social circles. But I didn't come back. I went deeper, I spent months in the southern districts after the floods, clearing roads, rebuilding homes brick by brick. I climbed scaffolds in heat that made the sky vibrate, ate cold rice with strangers who offer their last egg without hesitation. Those people, those forgotten communities, taught me more about dignity than my own family ever did. I moved constantly, from province to province, first as a worker, then a supervisor, then a coordinator. By the time I was 29, I'd overseen projects that had returned electricity and drinking water to over 50,000 people. But none of that made it into the family newsletters. They never asked. They didn't want to know. Whenever I did call, it was awkward. Elisa would answer with a tight voice, as if I'd interrupted a meeting. My mother still insisted on calling me darling, but only in a way that made it sound like I was the one who should apologize for drifting so far. And so I stopped calling. Years passed. I sent one invitation to my promotion ceremony, just one, out of hope or maybe stubbornness. My name had finally been included in the government bulletin, Clara Moretti, Chief Infrastructure Officer, Southern Emergency Division. No one came. No one replied. That's when I stopped sending invitations too. But when I received the letter about Elisa's award ceremony, signed by her office assistant, I don't know what made me say yes. Maybe curiosity. Maybe something deeper, darker. Maybe I wanted to see if they'd still look through me like glass. And they did. Now, sitting at that long white table with the cheap linen napkin clenched in my lap, I felt like that 16-year-old girl all over again. The one who was told, that's not what we do in this family. But maybe it was. Maybe this was what we did. We disappeared. We pretended. We smiled in photographs with people we couldn't look in the eye. Except I hadn't disappeared. Not really. Not to the ones who'd seen me rebuild broken cities with nothing but a blueprint and 20 volunteers. Not to the children who waved to me from rooftops when the lights came back on. Not to the team that called me Chief Clara with pride in their voices. They knew who I was, even if my own sister didn't. It started with the speech. They dimmed the lights in the banquet hall, and a soft spotlight lit up the stage. A soft instrumental played, while the announcer's voice rang through the speakers. Tonight, we honor a visionary, an artist of concrete and skyline. A woman whose designs have shaped the very face of our capital city. Applause. Cameras. My father leaned forward with both hands on the table like he was trying to absorb every word into his skin. My mother dabbed under her eyes with a silk handkerchief, though her mascara didn't move. And now, with the state governor in attendance, we present the award for outstanding civic design to Elisa Moretti. The room exploded into applause. She rose, serene as ever, and glided to the stage. Her husband gave her a kiss on the cheek. She adjusted her gown as if it had been choreographed. The gold pin of her firm shimmered under the lights. And then she looked out into the crowd and said, "This award isn't just for me. It's for the people who believed in me. My mentors, my partners, and of course my family." She paused, looked directly toward my parents' table. My mother clutched her hand proudly. My father gave a firm nod. Then Elisa added, smiling, "I've always been surrounded by excellence. My parents are brilliant minds. My younger brother, a rising lawyer. And, well, I like to say that being part of such a talented family keeps you humble." Laughter. Then she looked toward my table. I don't know if it was intentional, but her eyes landed on me and stayed there. "And even when some chose different paths," she continued, her voice softening just slightly, "they reminded me what not to become. And for that, too, I am strangely grateful." It hit me like a slap. People chuckled, politely. A few looked over their shoulders to see who she meant. My cousins didn't even try to hide their smirks. I sat perfectly still. The applause came again. She stepped down, trophy in hand, hugged by colleagues and whispered to by important-looking guests. The MC took the mic again and asked everyone to raise their glasses. To the visionary of visionaries, Elisa Moretti. Glasses clinked. Champagne flowed. My mouth was dry. That's when I saw it. A sharp shift at the far end of the hall. A group of uniformed officers walked in, 3 of them, in dark gray with silver cords and medals that gleamed even under the low light. Behind them came a tall man in a dark blue suit with a gold lapel pin. The governor's chief of staff. People turned. A murmur spread like wind catching dry leaves. The chief of staff scanned the room. walked toward the governor, who stood with a surprised expression, and whispered something in his ear. The governor straightened, then looked directly toward the guests' tables. Toward me. I saw his eyes land, pause, and narrow in recognition. My heart thudded once. Hard. He walked forward, slow and deliberate, followed by the officers. The music didn't stop. The servers kept pouring. The room hadn't realized what was happening yet. Only when the governor raised his hand and gently tapped a fork against his glass did the hush fall. "Excuse the interruption," he said, smiling politely. "But before this evening continues, I believe we have another guest in this room. One whose work has quite literally rebuilt half the province." He turned, and then, "Miss Clara Moretti, Chief of Emergency Infrastructure, Division South. Please rise." The silence was instant. Even the chandeliers felt frozen. My chair scraped back across the marble floor. My legs trembled. Slowly I stood. The governor raised his glass toward me. "To the real builder here." Gasps rippled through the hall like water. Someone dropped a fork. My father's mouth hung open. My sister's eyes widened, trophy still clutched in her hand. I wanted to disappear, but I couldn't. Not now. Because suddenly, I wasn't the shadow anymore. The governor didn't stop there. As I stood there, every eye fixed on me, I could feel the weight of silence. Not even the clink of a glass. Not a cough. Just breathless stillness. Then he said it. "Ms. Moretti, Chief Clara Moretti, your team's reconstruction of the southern districts after the floods was nothing short of historic. It's not every day we get to raise a glass to someone who saved more lives with steel and coordination than most ever will with words." He turned slightly toward the crowd. "Many of you may not know it, but while we were applauding designs and blueprints, this woman was working double shifts in mudslides and blackout zones, often with no resources and under extreme threat. Her leadership under crisis has been studied at the National Academy, and today her unit is mobilizing again for a new operation." Then the Chief of Staff stepped forward. His voice was deeper, clipped and urgent. "Apologies, ma'am. There's been a situation in Riverview. The dam's holding for now, but we've lost a comms line. Your team is already en route. They're waiting on your call." He handed me a secure comm device. I took it, my fingers barely steady. And then, from across the room, one of the officers, a woman with captain stripes, stepped forward and saluted me. "Commander," she said with a slight bow, "we're ready for your instructions." There it was. Commander. Not Clara. Not guest. Not the sister who left. The title cracked the air like a lightning strike. My mother pressed her napkin to her mouth, pale. My father sat stiff as a statue. Elisa looked like her trophy had turned to lead. Her hand clutched it tighter, but her face had lost all color. She didn't speak. She didn't laugh. No one did, because the room finally saw what I had become. Not a disappointment. Not an afterthought. Not an example of what not to become. But a force. A leader. A woman who had been building nations in silence while they built galleries of applause. The governor turned to me again. "If you need to leave, Commander Moretti, we understand. Your work takes priority. But I hope just for tonight, you'll let us say thank you." I took a breath. The weight of years, the rejection, the silence, the whispered mockery, it all pressed behind my ribs like a dam about to break. But I didn't cry. I simply nodded once. "Thank you, sir. I'll be brief." And as I turned to walk toward the exit, past my sister's table, I met her eyes. For the first time in 10 years, she didn't look away. She didn't blink. Because now she saw me. The real me. I stepped out of the banquet hall with the quiet echo of my heels across the marble floor. Behind me, the clatter of silverware had resumed, voices rising like they always do when people don't know what to say but feel compelled to speak. I didn't look back. The air outside was sharp and clean, a relief after the heavy perfume and tension of the hall. The night breeze carried the scent of jasmine from the garden hedges, and somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed faintly, familiar, urgent, almost comforting. A black SUV waited at the curb, the engine running. The officer from earlier opened the door for me, but I paused before getting in. I looked up at the building. Its stone facade glowed under the floodlights. A place built to impress. A place where my family thrived. Where I was never meant to be more than a background name on a guest list. But tonight had changed that. I didn't want vengeance. I didn't want to throw it in their faces. I hadn't come to be seen. I'd come because, deep down, some stubborn part of me still hoped they might see me without needing an audience. And yet, it took a uniform. It took a title. It took the governor himself for them to finally look at me. That hurt more than I expected. Inside the SUV, the team was already briefing on Riverview. Maps, status reports, timelines. I slid into my seat, nodded once, and the door shut behind me with a soft, final click. As we pulled away, I caught one last glimpse through the banquet hall window. My family was seated again, quieter now. My sister still held her trophy, but her hands had fallen to her lap. Her eyes were distant, staring into something far beyond the chandelier's glow. And then, just before the car turned the corner, she looked up. She looked straight at me through the glass. Her expression wasn't angry, or smug, or even ashamed. It was something else entirely. Recognition. And for the first time in a decade, she mouthed something I couldn't hear, but understood all the same. I didn't know. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just nodded once, slowly, because there was nothing left to prove. She didn't laugh this time. She didn't need to. I was already gone. And as the city lights blurred past the window, I felt the old ache in my chest, familiar, but lighter now. Like a scar that no longer throbbed, just remained. That night, my sister finally saw me. But it no longer mattered, because I had already built my place in the world without their applause, without their seat at the table. And for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting to be invited back.